Quilting is supposed to be a fun and wonderful hobby, but let's be honest, we've all made mistakes that have made us want to throw our projects completely out the window and give up. I have learned many things the hard way. Hey there, quilters. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Kristen with ISC Stars Quilting. If you love all things quilting, projects, tips, tricks, tutorials, I mean, all the fun things, you're in the right place. I am going to be spilling the tea on 5 costly quilting mistakes that I wish I had known about sooner in my quilting journey. So we've all been there, cutting fabric wrong, measuring up seams, spending extra money to fix those mistakes, going back to the store to get fabric because you ran out or you didn't calculate things right in the first place. These are all like pitfalls that we experience. So if you are feeling this, you are not alone in this, okay? Before we jump in, tell me down in the comments, what is the worst quilting mistake that you have ever made? And you know, maybe we can laugh about it a little bit together because I'm going to share with you some mistakes that I have made today too. Let's start with mistake number 1, and it is a very common mistake that I made for way too long because, I'm gonna say it, I was cheap, okay? And that is not changing your rotary blade cutter often enough. I used to struggle with, like, you know, the skipped stitches and like the things where it doesn't quite cut all the way through the layers that I needed, right? So I wouldn't change the rotary blade because I was busy. I would just like press harder, right? And that's how you fix that. No, you just need to like let it go and change to a fresh rotary blade cutter. If your cutter is skipping threads or it's leaving sections of the fabric that is not quite cut or it's tugging at the fabric, it's time for a new blade. I like to write the date on the rotary cutter package that I have where I keep all of my brand new rotary blades in there so I know when the last time I changed it is. So trust me, when you have a fresh blade, it not only saves your fabric, it saves time and it saves your sanity. Let's move on to mistake number 2. If your fabric isn't squared up, your quilt blocks are not going to be lining up properly, which means frustration, wasted fabric, and hours of fixing mistakes. You know, when I was early on in quilting, I thought close enough was close enough. But truthfully, I never enjoyed my projects because I spent time focusing on those little corners where the fabric did not meet up the way that I wanted it to. And when you're looking for those precise corners, you really have to get into those precise measurements. Squaring up your fabrics, trimming off just a teeny tiny bit is what makes a difference. There was a project that I remember I spent like an entire afternoon with my seam ripper trying to like squish the fabric together and make those seams come together where those blocks were coming together, right? And if I had just squared up my blocks in the first place and trimmed off that excess like sliver of fabric, I wouldn't have had to spend all afternoon on that. Take it from me, to get those nice precise corners, take a moment to square up your fabric using your acrylic ruler and a nice good straight rotary cutter, brand new one, right? And just, it'll save a lot of time. It'll save a lot of headaches later. If you've ever had trouble getting your seams to match up, this might be an issue for you. And it is so much better if you just take those 10 minutes in the beginning than it is if you take like the hours of frustration and seam ripping later on down the line. Mistake number 3 is an inconsistent seam allowance. A 1/4 inch seam might seem like such a small thing, right? And close enough, again with that close enough, but if your seams aren't consistent, your quilt blocks are not going to match up. You're going to have gaps or you're going to have puckering like I was trying to do in that other quilt that I was telling you about where I was trying to like squish the fabric to make it work. Eyeballing, this does not work for precise seam work, okay? If you are an improv quilter and that's how you want to do it and it doesn't matter if your seams don't match up, that's perfectly okay, okay? But if you are looking to get those nice precise seams, 1/4 inch seam, stay consistent, because if you have like a 1/16 of a seam here or even a 32nd of a seam here, by the time you get all the way down to the other end of your quilt, those seams are not going to be matching up and you're going to have extra fabric in there. And it became that almost like a hard mission for me to work on the precision of my quilt so that I could get those nice matched up blocks that I was looking for. I highly recommend using a 1/4-inch seam guide, this little guy right here, or even marking on your sewing machine so that you have a seam allowance. You can mark it with like a washi tape or something that is low tack, so it's not going to add any residue to your machine, to make sure of its accuracy. Little tricks like this can make a huge difference in accuracy, and it's going to make your final quilt top come together perfectly. Mistake number 4 is not pressing your seams properly, or as I used to do it more often than I'd like to admit, finger press it and move on. So pressing all of your seams isn't just about the looks. It's not something that like only the professionals do, okay? The pressing of your seams affects the entire structure of your quilt. And if you don't press it properly, you're gonna end up with some bulky seams that might show up later in the final quilted project. Let's just say it's much easier to fix it earlier on than it is later on when you have those bulky seams, that puckering or those misaligned pieces, right? So when I'm working right here at my sewing machine and at my sewing station here, I usually have a wool pressing mat next to me. I have one that is like, I don't know, I think it's like, I don't know, like 12 by 18 or something like that. They also have them in like 12 by 12, but it's a wool pressing mat and it gets really nice, crisp seams. When you are pressing, I want you to press. Don't iron like you're ironing like a dress or something and you want it nice and flat all over. You're going to press, you're not going to iron. There's not any back and forth motion. That can actually stretch your fabric. So always press your seams open, or you can press it to the side. Either way, that there's no right or wrong answer on. You can press it to the dark side, press it to the light side, press it to whatever side, open, whatever you like. This small step of making sure that your seams are ironed will be a big step forward in the quality of your quilt moving forward. Mistake number 5 is choosing the wrong thread for the job. Now, I am all about quilters using the tools that they have and using what is available. I personally do not buy everything top of the line, fabric, thread, all of that. I kind of have a mix of everything in there, but I want to point out that not all thread is created equal. Using the wrong thread or fiber content can cause breakage. And what I'm talking about is not necessarily on your quilts themselves, but on your machines, okay? If you stick to the cheapest, like most waxiest thread that you can find, it actually can cause buildup inside your sewing machine. And if you have a really nice, expensive sewing machine, that's the last thing you want to do, okay? It also can affect your quilts later on. Like, it's not going to hold up as long as the higher quality thread over years and years. If you have an opportunity next time you take your sewing machine in to be serviced, check with the service technician and ask them what their favorite thread is. I'm sure they will have opinion on ones that you should not use and ones that you definitely should use. And if you have threads that are super old and antique, those have a lot of lint in them too that also get trapped into your sewing machine. So if you are into using more embroidery threads and stuff, those go into a whole different category of different types and different shines and different weights and all of that. So find something that works really good with your machine, make sure it's of high quality, and make sure that you are watching what it is doing to your machine as well as what it's doing to the fabric that you're working with. So these are 5 quilting mistakes that have cost me time and money over the years, but now that you are aware of them and hopefully can learn from my mistakes, you know how to avoid them. I'm up for it. Let's share some horror stories in the comments and let me know some of the quilting disasters that you have experienced, because you're not alone. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss a quilting video from me. And if you want to avoid even more quilting struggles later on in your future, check out my recommended tool list down below. I have all of the tools and the other threads and things that I use down in the description box down below. I'm Kristen with ICStarsQuilting.com. I hope that you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Go create something beautiful today. Bye.